Hey guys, this is Hunter from TEQ Customs here. Today we're going to do an install video. This vehicle is a 3rd gen 4Runner, specifically 98. But this is just going to apply to all vehicles that use this H4 harness for install. We already have another video up for vehicles that do not use the H4 harness. So the first step you want to do is to install the harness on the vehicle. So this plug right here is going to be the first thing you want to install, and that's going to go into your driver's side H4 headlight plug, which is this. It may look slightly different, but same concept, and it just literally plugs right in. So if we undo the harness a little bit, on each side of the harness we have a ground. This is the low beam plug, and this is the high beam plug. Yours may look slightly different, but it's going to be a smaller plug than the low beam plug. So this high beam plug, this is for the driver's side, and then the entire harness just has a power, and this just goes right on the battery. So we will connect that in just a second. And then obviously on the other side, you just run it to the other side of the vehicle, and it has the ground and then the high beam and the low beam connection just like the other side. So you can just tuck this all the way at the moment, just back here, and we'll get to it in a second. And then you can just run the stuff for the passenger side over however you want. On 4Runners, we like to do it over this little coolant reservoir, and then just in front of the radiator up here, and then you can just zip tie it on. If you see any of us trip, that's because our shop dog Bella's here. She's obviously
Bella.
And she wouldn't want to lay anywhere out of the way, because that would be too easy for all of us. But yeah, you just run it along there, and then you have quite a bit of wire to work with, so it's plenty long for even your larger vehicles like Tundras and Sequoias. But now that we have it on both sides, we can go ahead, and we're going to want to ground everything on this side, and try not to lose anything. We've got a lot of things grounded here. And you want to make sure you have a good ground. Obviously this is a good ground because he has quite a few different things grounded here. But if you're doing a new ground, a lot of the times you can just drill a screw into the sheet metal in the engine bay or anything like that, or just use an existing ground for anything. You can also do it on the battery, it works just fine. But if you do drill a new screw, just make sure to scrape some paint off to get down to the bare metal, and make sure you have a good connection, because a grounding issue is usually if you install everything, your headlights aren't working. That's normally the first thing we tell people to check. So we'll go ahead and we'll grab the ground for this side, which is right here. And I wouldn't worry about wire management at the moment, because it's gonna be all messed up anyway. So I'm gonna shove everything on the screw again, and we can feed it back in.
I've got an extra hand if you need it.
Yeah, here we go. And this is a very pet-friendly install, so if your dog wants to help, you should let her. And then next we will leave batteries at 12, so we're going to put the positive in on the battery terminal here. And we can go ahead and I'm sure that's going to fall off in a second. So, all right, so we've got the power, and we'll just slide it right on that screw, and it goes on nice and tight. And then the rest of this you can just run wherever you want to. Actually, let's run this here so we can work on our wire management a little bit. But the BxBuilt install system is definitely a whole lot easier. I'll grab the socket from me. Than your HID installs. These have a whole lot less wires, no ballasts, no bulbs. Everything just goes right into the back of the, out of the back of the headlight, and then just to your battery and just to the other side. So now we've got the power connected as well, and that's just a little fuse just to make sure. And then just repeat these steps. All you need to do on the other side is ground it. So just go ahead and ground the passenger side. There's no power connection on this side. It just relays from the other side of the vehicle. But once you install this ground, your harness is good to go and you can move on to the next step. So the next thing you want to do is you want to install your connections for your halos. So if you have switchback halos, you're going to have something that looks like this and maybe plugged into the back of your headlight, but it would just unplug with this little connector. And then you have 3 wires here. The red wire is for the white, the black wire is ground, and then the yellow wire is for the amber. So you have a few options with the switchback halos. The switchback part of it is connecting your red wire to some kind of daytime running light or parking light feature. I prefer parking lights because then it's selectable on the turn signal stalk, but you can also do it to running lights if that's what you prefer. And then the yellow wire goes to your turn signal. So when you flip on your turn signal, it'll go from white to blinking amber and then back to white when you turn your turn signal off, hence the switchback name. You can also just do it full-time amber if you prefer. You wouldn't have a turn signal there, but most vehicles have a turn signal somewhere else on their vehicle anyway, so it's not that big of a deal if you prefer that. And then of course you just have to ground it regardless of what you do. So you can either ground it to a separate ground on the vehicle like we did with the headlight, or you can ground it to whatever feature you're using. On this 4Runner, the parking lights are just wired to the corner light that sits right here. We took the connector off, and you'll want to do the same. You can splice the connector back on if you want to keep your parking light. But all you would do for the switchback function would just be to connect the red wire to this green wire right here. And on most Toyotas, for both turn signals and parking lights and anything like that, the green wire is going to be your power, and then the white wire, a lot of the time it has a little black stripe on it as well. That's going to be your ground. So all you would do is connect this red wire to the green wire and the black wire to the white wire here. So obviously power to power, ground to ground. And then you might need to extend the amber wire for the turn signal depending on where your turn signals are placed. A lot of Tacomas and newer vehicles have the turn signal in the headlight housing already. The 4Runner has it in the bumper here, so typically you have to extend it a little bit down to this wiring down here. And then the wires are just the same colors, green and white down here, and you would just tap that into those wires down here for the turn signal. But that's, you have to do this on each side. So just connect it to the respective things on this side. We can just look over here. This is what everything looks like before You cut the connector off and leave you a little bit of room for the connector just in case you want to reconnect it, or, you know, in the future if you take the headlights off for whatever reason, you can put it back on. But that's it's pretty simple. It's just a few connections and that's it. All right, so if you got your headlight harness installed, this is the next step, which is halo installation. If you have color changing halos, you'll have something that looks like this. So it looks kind of daunting at first, but it's actually really simple. The white wire is just the power, and the black wire is just the ground for this control box. And you just connect that to whatever feature you want, either running lights or parking lights. I like to do parking lights just so it's selectable all the time, and we're going to connect them to the parking lights, which we'll show in a second. And then the other side here is this is going to be all your connections that come out of the back of the headlight, and this is where the actual halos and demon eyes and everything plugs into. You have a ton of connectors here, and that's just because if you have like a front halo and a rear halo and a demon eye on every headlight, then you need that many connections for each headlight. So if we look right here, we have the headlights themselves that we're installing on this video, and each of these just have a connector, and it just snaps right in here, and then you pull it out really easily. But you want to keep this box towards the middle of the vehicle so you have enough wire to reach both sides. And on larger vehicles, we do provide extensions for one side, so you can put it, you know, here on the vehicle and then extend it over here and have enough room to work with. But on most vehicles, especially 4Runners and Tacomas, you really don't need extensions because it's long enough to begin with. But we're going to start by just setting this in the middle, and then we have each of these connections. And we typically run it out the front of the headlight and then along the radiator and grill area, and just hide it behind the grill, because there isn't really much room, especially in these vehicles up here along the radiator, to put the box. It's the bulkiest part of the install, and obviously you don't want to set it here on top of your fan or anything and, you know, have it start whacking things. But we'll go ahead, and you only do need to connect this power and ground to one side of the vehicle, so that's an advantage you have over like switchback halos, because you have to connect those to each side. But this only has 2 wires and 1 connection, and yeah, she's taking a nice nap. She's a good shop dog. But we'll just go ahead and connect the power and ground wires here to, let's see if I can get this to set somewhere without falling over. So we're connecting these to the parking light. The parking light is going to be the wire over here. If we look at the other side, we still have a connector on here, but it's just the green wire is power, and the white wire with the little black stripe is going to be ground. And that's pretty universal for Toyotas. For a lot of like turn signals and parking lights and running lights and all of that, green is typically power, and the white or black or whatever is going to be ground. So we'll grab our connectors over here. We're using these solder and seal connectors, so they have a little bit of soft metal in the middle, and then these 2 rubber things, and when you put heat on it with a heat gun, it holds the wires in and then solders the wires together, and it becomes a really, really strong and watertight connection. So these are from Hashtronica. We buy them in bulk, but you can get them in smaller quantities, and they're helpful for a lot of things, not just headlight installs. So we've already stripped our power and ground wire, so we're just going to go ahead and strip the power and ground wire for the parking light real quick, and just slide the connectors on and into that, and match up power and ground obviously. So it's going to be black to white and then white to green. So if that's not confusing, I don't know what is. But just take it slow, and you can always cut the wire and reconnect it if you need to. But just put a little bit of heat on it and it'll seal right up. And these connectors are awesome. You can actually see the metal melt right there in the middle, and it just becomes a solid connection right there. So then we can go ahead and do the other side.
Bella, what you think? Is he doing it right, Bella?
Well, we'll see.
Go
We'll
with
get her.
supervisor.
We'll get her approval at the end.
Right.
You always have to get her approval before you commit to any projects. It might take away from snack or walk time, and that's unacceptable. But anyways, we'll just same thing as we did with the last one. And this one's pulling out a little bit, so you just have to make sure that your wires do not pull out a little bit. That's kind of hot, so. Woo! Oh, wait a second, let it cool down so I don't burn myself here. Oh, we're just gonna try again. You can always try again. That's the till you run out of wire, and then you can't try again. But I'll have to add some music or something.
Yeah, right. do, do, do.
Okay, there we go. All right, and there we go. Second time's the charm. So now we have the control box connected to the power and the ground. So when you just turn your the parking light, which is the first switch on the headlight stalk, or if you have a little dial or whatever, it's going to be the first switch on there as well. But that's all you need to connect for the control box. Your box will already have the Bluetooth controller connected to it, which is just a little white box. And the app that it uses is LED Hue, and you can also just scan the QR code and it'll bring it up in the App Store or whatever, both for Android and Apple, same for both. So, and then you can just, we just like to, this is all waterproof, by the way, so you don't have to worry about having it up here where it may get wet or anything. So you can just place these, we like to put it just around here somewhere out of the way. Just be mindful that you are putting your grill back, so don't put it, over this grill mounting hole or anything like that. And then you can just zip tie all these wires together and out of the way for the ones that you don't need. If you only have 1 or 2 connections per headlight, you'll have a little bit of extras. So, but now you're ready to go ahead and put your actual headlights in, which we will get to in just a second. So now that you've got your new headlight on your vehicle, the only thing left to do is to connect the connectors from the headlight to the connectors on your wiring harness. So a little pop quiz if you've been listening. Can you remember which connectors go to where? Try to do it real quick and turn your headlights on and you'll figure out if you do it right or not. But all we have to connect is the high beam, the high beam to the high beam connector. They only go in one way, so if it doesn't go in, don't force it. You're just not connecting it to the right thing. But you just snap these 2 connectors together, and once this tab is poking out, you can see it real easy. And then these just slide in. Make sure I was about to put it in the wrong way. Make sure you match up power and ground on these. I was about to do it backwards. You see power's on the wrong side, and it won't work if you do that. But then you can just tuck these things back down, just shove them down there and forget about them. Never look at them again, because it'll probably make you upset that you have a little nest of wires back there. Or you can make it look pretty if you have the time, but. And then you can just run the little connector for the halos, if you have the color changing halos. If you don't, you just run the little wires through wherever back here, and then you'll have a connection for the halos in the back of the headlight. But with the color changing halos, you just run the connector out here to the control box that we had installed, and just pick a connection closest, and that just snaps in. And then everything should be good. Just repeat the same exact steps for the other side. Just connect the high and the low beam and the halo. If you have a halo, if you don't have a halo, then everything just plugs right in, and you probably skipped half the video, so good for you. But we will be back in just a second with the finished product, and we'll show you what it looks like. All right, so I'm going to explain real quick how to adjust your headlights once you have them installed on your vehicle. You'll want to be about 30 feet away from a wall or a garage door or something like that. And you want to have them on the vehicle before you adjust, because it's hard to tell what exactly how they sit on the bench. So the first thing is that your housing will have something like these. They're little adjustment screws. This is an 8mm bolt on this 3rd gen 4Runner headlight housing. Yours might be slightly different, and yours might be a screw or something like that. But you will use these two to adjust up and down and left and right. If you have only one screw on your housing, then that screw is just up and down, and you won't need to adjust it left and right. And then if your beam pattern is not completely flat, which we try to flatten them as much as we can before we send them out, but obviously it's impossible to account for everything, you can just take some pliers like this and then just turn the projector from the back of the housing like so. I'm not actually turning it because I have this one level, but you just put some pliers on and you can turn it. And if you're having trouble turning it, sometimes it helps to just loosen this lock ring slightly, and then it will be a little bit easier to turn, and then just tighten the lock ring back down. And if you're noticing a little bit of vibration when you're driving, it's likely that this lock ring isn't completely tightened down. So you can just take the little rubber boot off that goes on here and tighten that lock ring down, and it'll fix any vibration issues that you may have.